Buckle up, folks. You won't believe what happened in Professor Lily Martinez's Mathematics and Society class at Bay Area University. The air crackled with anticipation as she stepped onto the stage of the crowded lecture hall. Her sharp eyes scanned the hundreds of eager students. Today, something big was about to go down. Lily, with a confident smile playing on her lips, adjusted her glasses and clicked the remote. The first slide flashed onto the screen. A vibrant image of Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old White House press secretary, beaming behind a microphone. "This young woman," Lily began, her voice laced with a hint of challenge, "is the youngest person ever to hold that incredibly powerful position. But the question we need to ask ourselves is this: is she truly the brilliant mind the media portrays, or simply a product of privilege and perhaps a little bit of luck?" Before we dive deeper into this explosive story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our latest, most captivating stories. A murmur rippled through the lecture hall. Several students nodded, their faces thoughtful. Lily pressed on, her tone becoming more pointed. "Karoline Leavitt promotes policies, yes. But does she truly understand the intricate numbers behind them? I highly doubt it." She strode purposefully to the whiteboard, grabbing a marker. With rapid, deliberate strokes, she scribbled a complex voter trend prediction problem. Variables, integrals, and a tangled web of statistical data filled the board. "This," she declared, circling the problem like a gladiator challenging her opponent, "is what real experts grapple with. No one in that administration, especially someone like Ms. Leavitt, could possibly solve this." The lecture hall at Bay Area University buzzed with energy. Professor Lily Martinez's bold challenge hung in the air. The projector's light illuminated her confident face as she gestured towards the intricate problem, now dominating the whiteboard. A chaotic mix of variables, integrals, and voter trend statistics she'd just unleashed. "This isn't for people who just talk a big game," Lily emphasized, her voice steely with conviction. "Karoline Leavitt might stand behind that White House microphone, but I bet she can't even grasp a tenth of this." A wave of chuckles swept through the students. Some nodded in agreement, while others quietly pulled out their phones, eager to capture the dramatic moment. But in the back row, a petite figure sat silently, almost invisible. A gray baseball cap shadowed her face, her sharp eyes hidden behind rimless glasses. Dressed in a simple hoodie, her hair pulled back neatly, she looked like any other student, perhaps a bit older than the teenage crowd around her. But she wasn't just any student. It was Karoline Leavitt herself, the White House press secretary, the very person Lily was targeting. Karoline tilted her head, her gaze fixed on the whiteboard. A mixture of curiosity and amusement played on her lips. She hadn't planned on being here today. Earlier that morning, while scrolling through X, formerly Twitter, to gauge the reaction to her latest press briefing, she'd stumbled upon a flurry of posts from Bay Area students. "Professor Martinez is going to expose Karoline Leavitt as a fraud," one exclaimed. "Finally, someone's telling the truth about her," another declared. Normally, Karoline would have brushed it off. The White House kept her relentlessly busy with meetings, crafting media strategies, and fielding tough questions from the press. But this time, something made her pause. Maybe it was the dismissive way they called her lucky instead of talented. A subtle jab she'd heard ever since her appointment at the tender age of 27. Or perhaps it was the memory of her days at St. Anselm College, teaching herself advanced mathematics in the quiet hours to analyze media data. Something no one expected from a political science major. Whatever the reason, Karoline felt a sudden urge to act. She grabbed a baseball cap, slipped on a pair of glasses, and drove herself to the Bay Area University campus. She slipped into the lecture hall, just as Professor Martinez began her class. Now, sitting anonymously among the crowd, a surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. Lily was still holding court at the podium. "Think about it," she said, clicking to the next slide, which showed Karoline speaking confidently at the White House. "She's young, pretty, well-connected. That's the recipe for success in Washington. But math? Real data analysis? I'm afraid that's something her team hires out. A few students clapped politely, while a guy in a Trump 2024 campaign t-shirt in the front row scowled in annoyance. Lily smirked, turning back to the whiteboard. "So who's brave enough to tackle this problem?" she challenged, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Or shall we just agree that people like Karoline are only good in front of a camera?" Silence descended upon the room. The students exchanged nervous glances, no one daring to raise a hand. The problem looked like a mathematical nightmare, filled with unfamiliar symbols and complex statistics that even the math majors hesitated to touch. Lily crossed her arms, a triumphant expression spreading across her face. "No one? I'm not surprised. This is real math, not some political game." Karoline took a deep breath. The problem wasn't simple, but it wasn't unfamiliar either. Years of working with intricate campaign and media data had taught her to dissect complex patterns, from predicting voter behavior to optimizing messaging. She subtly adjusted her glasses, her hand trembling slightly, with a mix of nervousness and excitement. This was her chance to prove something, not just to Professor Martinez, but to herself. "Sorry to interrupt," a soft but clear voice rang out from the back of the room. Lily turned, a frown creasing her brow. All eyes swung towards Karoline as she stood, pulling her baseball cap a little lower. "I think," she continued, her voice gaining confidence, "I'd like to try." The room erupted in whispers. "Who's that?" one student muttered. "She looks kind of familiar," another replied, squinting. Lily narrowed her eyes, clearly not recognizing the figure before her. "Fine," she said, her tone tinged with skepticism. "Step up to the board, miss." "Just call me Kay," Karoline replied, descending the steps with startling calm. She took the marker from Lily's hand, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on her. Lily crossed her arms, a faint smirk playing on her lips. "Go ahead," she said, her voice laced with doubt. "But don't worry if you can't solve it. This takes years of experience." Karoline didn't respond. She studied the problem quickly, her mind breaking down the variables: voter turnout rates, demographic data, and the integral function predicting policy impact. It was complex, but she'd faced similar challenges crafting media strategies for the Trump campaign. Her fingers moved across the board, her handwriting swift and steady. Lily watched, her smile slowly fading. The students' whispers grew louder, as Karoline filled line after line without hesitation. 1 minute passed, then 2. Karoline paused, surveying the whiteboard now covered in figures, then turned to Lily. "Done," she said simply, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. The room fell silent. Lily stepped forward, her eyes glued to the board, searching for a mistake, a flaw in the logic. But the more she looked, the paler she became. The problem wasn't just solved, it was perfectly optimized. "You! Who are you?" Lily stammered, her voice trembling for the first time. Karoline gave a small, knowing smile, reaching up to remove her baseball cap. The familiar face from countless news broadcasts was now revealed. "I'm Karoline Leavitt," she said, her voice calm but confident. "Nice to meet you, Professor Martinez." The lecture hall at Bay Area University exploded with shouts and applause. Lily Martinez stood frozen, clutching the marker, her eyes fixed on the whiteboard, now brimming with figures and equations that Karoline had just flawlessly completed. Students clamored, some raising their phones to record the unbelievable scene, others yelling, "Is she really here?" Lily blinked, trying to regain her composure. What did you just say?" she stuttered, her voice shaky for the first time that day. Karoline tilted her head, still poised and collected. "I said I'm Karoline Leavitt, and I just solved your problem." Lily stepped towards the board, her eyes darting over each line of the solution. The problem: a complex voter trend prediction model based on demographics, turnout rates, and socioeconomic factors wasn't just solved. It was enhanced. Karoline had simplified the integral, reducing the prediction error by at least 20%, something even Lily hadn't anticipated. "Impossible," Lily muttered, turning back to Caroline, a look of disbelief etched on her face. How did you do this? This is advanced math. It takes years of experience. Caroline shrugged, setting the marker on the table. I taught myself, working with campaign data. I had to understand how numbers work. It's not that hard if you really want to get it. The room buzzed again. A student in a Trump 2024 t-shirt in the front row jumped up, shouting, "She's a genius, I told you!" Another girl nearby shook her head, whispering to her friend, "She must have cheated. How does a press secretary know this stuff?" Lily raised a hand, signaling for silence, though she herself was struggling to stay composed. "Everyone, sit down," she barked, her voice higher than usual. The crowd settled reluctantly, but their eyes remained locked on Caroline. Lily took a deep breath, facing Caroline squarely. "All right, Ms. Leavitt. If you really solved it, explain how you did it." She crossed her arms, clearly aiming to test her further. Unwilling to believe that someone as young as Caroline, whom she'd pegged as a product of privilege, could pull this off. Caroline nodded, stepping back to the whiteboard. "Sure," she said, her tone steady and even. She pointed to the complex integral Lily had originally written. "Your problem used demographic and voter data, but the way you set up the function ignored real-time fluctuations. I added a dynamic variable, call it a live shift, to account for factors like voter sentiment shifting with breaking news or significant events." Lily squinted, following Caroline's every word, her initial skepticism slowly giving way to grudging respect. Caroline continued, her hand moving quickly as she wrote an additional equation. "Then I simplified the integral by breaking the data into smaller clusters: age, gender, region. And I ran a quick mental simulation. Finally, I optimized it by reducing the weight of low-impact variables, like traditional ads, which aren't as effective as you might think in today's media landscape." The room was silent, save for the soft squeak of the marker against the whiteboard. Lily felt her pulse quicken. What Caroline had done wasn't just correct. It was smarter than her own approach. "And this," Lily said, pointing to the final line where Caroline had dramatically cut the prediction error. "How did you know to reduce the error by exactly 20%? Caroline smiled faintly. "I analyzed data extensively for the 2024 campaign. We had to predict swing state voters with the tightest margins possible. I learned real-world data rarely matches theory perfectly. You adjust based on experience." A student in the middle of the room burst out laughing. "She just said the professor's theory was wrong." Lily flushed, a wave of embarrassment washing over her, but she couldn't deny it. Caroline hadn't just solved the problem. She'd outdone her. Lily turned back to Caroline, grasping for a rebuttal. "Where did you learn this? St. Anselm doesn't teach advanced math like this." Caroline shrugged again, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "I taught myself. At night after working at Fox News and then at the White House. I like numbers. They don't lie the way words sometimes do." The response drew a smattering of applause from a few students, but Lily wasn't ready to concede her initial point. "You make it sound good," Lily countered, "but this doesn't change my fundamental point. Your success still comes from privilege, connections, opportunities that others simply don't get." Caroline stepped closer to Lily, her gaze sharp but not hostile. "Privilege got me opportunities, sure. But no one forced me to spend hours poring over math books or analyzing voter data. That was my choice. What do you think, Professor? You've got privilege standing here teaching. Did you teach yourself to get better?" The question hit Lily like a punch to the gut. She opened her mouth to reply, but found no words. The student's murmur grew louder. "She just clapped back at the professor," one whispered excitedly. "So cool," another chimed in. Lily felt her face heat up, not from anger, but from a profound sense of embarrassment. The young woman before her had not only solved her incredibly difficult problem, but had also challenged her entire worldview, and done so with remarkable intelligence and composure. "All right, Ms. Leavitt," Lily finally said, her voice quieter now, tinged with a newfound respect. You're good at math, I'll give you that. But I still want to know, what are you doing here? Don't you have work at the White House instead of sitting in my class? Karoline chuckled, showing a hint of Gen Z playfulness for the first time. I saw posts on X saying you were going to expose me. I thought, why not come see for myself? She paused, a mischievous glint in her eyes. And by the way, I wanted to prove something. I'm not just the person who talks into a microphone. The room erupted again. A girl in the back shouted, "She's so cool!" A guy raised his phone, yelling, "This is going on TikTok!" Lily raised a hand, trying to restore order. "Enough, everyone, sit down," she snapped, but her eyes never left Karoline. "Prove something, huh?" Lily muttered, glancing at the whiteboard again, a grudging admiration in her voice. "Well, you did it." She turned back to the crowd, taking a deep breath. "It seems we need to talk more, Ms. Leavitt, because clearly I misjudged you." Karoline nodded, the smile still playing on her lips. "I'm ready, Professor, but this time maybe you should challenge me with a tougher problem." The lecture hall gradually quieted after the dramatic showdown between Professor Lily Martinez and Karoline Leavitt. The applause and excited chatter of the students gave way to an awkward silence as Lily raised her hand, signaling everyone to sit back down. She looked at Karoline, who still stood by the whiteboard, that faint smile lingering on her face. "You did it," Lily repeated, her voice low but sharp, a hint of suspicion still lingering. "But I still don't get why you came here." Karoline shrugged, adjusting her glasses slightly. "Like I said, I saw some posts on X about your lecture. I was curious, that's all." Lily narrowed her eyes, clearly unsatisfied with the answer. "Curious? You're the White House press secretary, not some idle student. Don't you have anything more important to do than drive here just to hear what I say about you?" Karoline chuckled softly, her Gen Z vibe shining through with a casual shrug. "I like facing challenges. Plus, I wasn't far. I'm in California for a press event. It only took an hour to get here." Lily crossed her arms, still unconvinced. Something felt off. The coincidence was too perfect. Karoline showing up on the exact day Lily planned to use her as an example, then solving a problem Lily had spent a week preparing to bolster her argument. "All right," Lily said, her tone hardening. "But you solved that problem too fast. You knew about it beforehand, didn't you?" Karoline raised an eyebrow, clearly caught off guard. "Knew about it? What do you mean?" Lily pointed at the whiteboard. "This problem isn't something you'd randomly stumble across on X, or in your daily work. It's a model I designed myself, never published." "How did you handle it like you'd seen it before?" The room buzzed again. A student in the middle row whispered, "Does she think Karoline cheated?" Another replied, "No way! She solved it right in front of us." Karoline stepped closer to Lily, her expression shifting from relaxed to serious. "I didn't cheat, Professor. I taught myself math back in college. Data analysis, statistical modeling, anything to get better at my job. I looked at your problem and saw it was like stuff I did for the 2024 campaign. That's it." Lily shook her head, unwilling to let it go. "I don't believe in coincidences. Someone tipped you off about this lecture. And maybe the problem too." Karoline frowned, showing confusion for the first time. "You mean someone set me up to come here? Who could do that?" Lily turned to the crowd. "Which of you posted about this lecture online? Raise your hands." A few hesitant hands went up. A girl with green-dyed hair in the back row said, "I posted on X this morning saying you'd talk about Karoline Leavitt, but I didn't mention any problem." Another guy added, "I posted too, but just stuff like, Professor Martinez is going to take down some White House folks. No details or anything." Lily turned back to Karoline. "So you really just happened to see those posts?" Karoline nodded. "Yeah, I track hashtags about myself. It's part of the job. When I saw them, I figured coming here would be more fun than sitting in meetings all day." Lily went quiet for a moment, thinking. Karoline's explanation made sense, but the doubt in her wouldn't completely fade. Then why the disguise, the cap, the glasses? You didn't want to be recognized? Karoline laughed, this time more freely. I didn't want to disrupt your class right off the bat. Plus, if I'd been spotted early, I wouldn't have gotten to solve the problem. You'd have kicked me out." The students burst into laughter, a few clapping. Lily couldn't help but smirk slightly, though her eyes stayed sharp. "You're clever, Leavitt, but I still think something's off here." Before Karoline could respond, a student in the middle row held up his phone. "Professor, look at this." He rushed forward, showing the screen to Lily. It was a new post on X from an unknown account. "Karoline Leavitt just got called to the board in Martinez's class, and she solved the hardest problem. Someone knew this was coming." Lily's face paled as she read it. "Who posted this? It went up 2 minutes ago." Karoline peeked over Lily's shoulder, frowning. "I don't know, but if they knew I went to the board, they're watching this class right now." The room erupted again, students glancing around as if hunting for a spy in the crowd. Lily turned back to Karoline, her voice dropping. "What do you think? Someone wanted you here and they knew what you'd do." Karoline nodded slowly. "Maybe, but if so, what do they want from me, or you?" Lily set the phone on the table, her mind racing. "I don't like this. If someone's watching us, I want to know why. What about you, Leavitt? Are you up for digging into this?" Karoline smiled, her eyes lighting up with a spark of determination. "I'm the press secretary. Finding the truth is what I do every day. I'm in." Lily nodded, feeling a flicker of respect for the young woman in front of her for the first time. "Good. But we need to be discreet. If someone's leaking info, they could be in this room right now." Karoline scanned the room, then turned back to Lily. "So, where do we start?" Lily pointed at the phone with the mysterious post. "With this. Someone knows too much, and I bet they're not stopping at just posting on X." A student in the corner raised his hand. "Professor, I just checked that account. It was created this morning and there's no personal info at all." Lily and Karoline exchanged a look. "A fake account," Karoline said, her voice low. "Someone's targeting us on purpose." Lily nodded grimly. "Looks like we've got a common enemy, Leavitt. Are you ready to team up with me to find them?" Karoline tilted her head, her smile returning, now with a hint of steel. "I don't mind working with someone who tried to take me down. But this time, Professor, we play it my way, okay?" Lily chuckled faintly, surprised by Karoline's confidence. "Fine. But don't expect me to go easy on you." As Lily Martinez and Karoline Leavitt faced each other, a shared determination flashed in both their eyes. The X post the student had just shown, a fake account with detailed knowledge of Karoline solving the problem, rang like an alarm bell. "Someone's targeting us," Karoline repeated, her voice low but firm. Lily nodded, crossing her arms. "And I want to know why. If you're ready, Leavitt, we start now." Karoline grinned, her Gen Z shrug making a comeback. "I was born to dig up the truth. Let's go." Lily turned to the still buzzing crowd of students. "Class is over for today. I want you all to go home and don't post anything online until I say so. Got it?" The students nodded, some muttering in disappointment, but they began packing up. Lily and Karoline stepped out of the lecture hall, their eyes wearily scanning the bustling hallway. "We need a quiet spot," Lily said, leading Karoline towards her office on the 3rd floor of the science building. The small room was crammed with books and papers, a mini whiteboard covered in math formulas. Lily shut the door, locked it, and turned to Karoline. "If someone's watching us, they might have heard the whole lecture. I don't like this one bit." Karoline nodded, taking a seat across from Lily's desk. "Me neither. But if they knew I solved the problem, they had to be close or have a way to listen in. Do you think someone in your department could be behind this?" Lily frowned, thinking. "Maybe. The math department has a few people who don't like me. They think I focus too much on social stuff instead of pure math. But to go this far," she paused, a name flashing in her mind. "Victor Hammond." Karoline tilted her head. "Who's that?" Lily stepped to the whiteboard, writing Victor Hammond in red marker. "A professor in the math department, former chair, with access to our servers. He hates how I teach, says I disgrace math with lectures like today's." Lily stopped, her eyes widening. "And he once asked me about my data modeling research, the stuff I used to make today's problem." Karoline sat up straighter, her eyes gleaming. He knew you'd use that problem to attack me. Lily nodded slowly. Possibly. I mentioned it to him a few months ago during a department meeting. He seemed really interested, asked for a draft, but I refused because it wasn't finished. Karoline tapped her fingers on the desk, thinking fast. So, if he wanted your research, why drag me into it? I've got no connection to your department. Lily turned back to her desk, opening her laptop. Hold on. If Hammond wanted to steal my research, he'd need a reason to make it stand out, to get me to show it off. You're the perfect target. White House press secretary, young, famous. If I used you as an example and you showed up, everyone would notice the problem and my research. Karoline nodded, catching on. Then he could make off with your work without anyone suspecting. Smart, but we need proof, Lily said, pulling up her email list on the laptop. I'll check for any signs from Hammond. Karoline stood, peering over Lily's shoulder. Let me help. I'm used to sifting through data. White House work taught me how to find a needle in a haystack. They started scrolling through emails, but soon Lily paused, pointing at an old one from 3 months back. Look at this. The email was from Hammond. Subject: question about your data model. The message was brief. Lily, I heard you're working on a new voter prediction model. Can you share a draft? I have outside partners who'd like to see it. Lily gritted her teeth. I shut him down right then. But if he has server access... She switched to check the department's server login history. And sure enough, Hammond accessed my server last week. Karoline frowned. Did he get anything? Lily shook her head. Not sure. I encrypted the main file, but he might have seen a draft enough to know what I'd do today. Karoline stepped to the window, gazing out at the campus. So he leaked it to get me here. But why does he need your research so badly? Lily sat down, thinking. My model doesn't just predict voters. It could work for any social data, ads, media, even public policy. If Hammond sold it to a political consulting firm, he'd make a fortune. Karoline turned back, her gaze sharp. Like the firms I've dealt with in Washington? They'd pay millions for an edge in elections. Exactly, Lily said. But we need to be sure. If Hammond's watching me, he might have planted something in here. She glanced around the office, suddenly uneasy. Karoline nodded, starting to search. I've seen this stuff at the White House. Hidden mics, tiny cameras. Let me check. She bent down, looking under the desk, then froze. Professor, come here. Lily rushed over, seeing Karoline point to a tiny black device taped under the desk's edge. What's that? Lily asked, her heart pounding. Karoline picked it up, examining it closely. A listening device, not a cheap one. This can record remotely. Lily paled. Hammond put that here. He's been hearing everything I say. Karoline nodded grimly. Probably, and if he heard today's lecture, he knows I solved the problem. Meaning he's tracking both of us. Lily clenched her fist. I can't believe it. He's my colleague. Karoline set the device on the table, her voice cooling. I've faced people like this. They don't care about colleagues, just their own gain. Lily took a deep breath, steadying herself. So what do we do? Call the police? Karoline shook her head. Not enough evidence to nail him yet. Just the email and server access, but I've got an idea. We trap him. Lily raised an eyebrow. Trap him? How? Karoline grinned, a glint of cunning in her eyes. We fake a collaboration. Make a dummy research project, something so tempting Hammond can't resist. Then we watch what he does with it. Lily considered it for a moment, then nodded slowly. I like that. But how do we make him buy it? Karoline pointed at the laptop. We create a fake document. Call it Project Referendum, a voter prediction model with 95% accuracy. I'll toss in some White House details to make it look legit. What do you think? Lily smirked, feeling a rare connection with Karoline for the first time. You're a real politician. Cunning as hell. But I'm in. If Hammond wants to play dirty, we'll teach him a lesson. Karoline nodded, shaking Lily's hand. Deal? But we've got to move fast. If he gets suspicious, it's all over. Lily Martinez's small office at Bay Area University transformed into an impromptu command center as she and Karoline Leavitt finalized Project Referendum. The meticulously crafted fake document designed to ensnare Professor Victor Hammond. The glow of the laptop screens illuminated their focused faces. Lily typed the last intricate equation, while Karoline added a vibrant, realistic chart based on actual campaign data she'd handled during her time at the White House. "Done," Karoline announced, leaning back in her chair, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. "It looks real enough to fool anyone, but it's riddled with subtle flaws if they actually try to use it." Lily stared at the screen, nodding with a sense of grim satisfaction. "A voter prediction model with 95% accuracy. Hammond won't be able to resist. But how do we get him to bite?" Karoline grinned, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Easy. You invite him over. Say you just had a major breakthrough thanks to collaborating with me. I bet he'll jump at the chance to get a piece of the action." Lily raised an eyebrow, a hint of doubt in her voice. "You sure Hammond's not stupid? He might suspect something." "He's greedy," Karoline replied with a knowing smirk, a touch of the cynicism she'd picked up in Washington coloring her tone. "I've seen his types, I swear. When they smell money, they forget all about caution." Lily smirked, genuinely impressed by the young woman's sharp instincts. "All right, Leavitt, I'll call him, but we need a way to track him. I don't want him disappearing with this document." Karoline nodded, pulling out her phone. "I've got someone who can help. Let me call my assistant at the White House. She's a pro at tracking digital stuff." While Karoline made the call, Lily drafted a short, enticing email to Hammond. "Victor, I just finished a new voter prediction model with Karoline Leavitt. 95% accuracy. Want to discuss? Meet me in my office at 3 p.m. She hit send, her heart beating a little faster than usual. Karoline hung up, turning back to Lily. "My assistant, Jen, will monitor Hammond's email and social media. If he sends this document anywhere, we'll know." Lily nodded. "Good. But I still want more assurance. If he takes it, how do we know who he gives it to?" Karoline thought for a second, then pointed at the desk drawer. "Got anything in there, like a flash drive or something small?" Lily opened it, pulling out an old USB drive. Karoline smiled. "Perfect. We give him the document on this. I'll have Jen embed a hidden tracker in the file. If he sends it anywhere, the code will ping his location." They quickly loaded Project Referendum onto the USB. Jen, on the other end of the phone, expertly embedded the hidden tracking code in just 10 minutes. By 2:50 p.m., Lily and Karoline were as ready as they could be. Lily sat behind her desk, trying to appear calm, while Karoline stood by the window, pretending to skim through some papers to avoid raising any suspicion in Hammond. A knock came at exactly 3 p.m. Lily took a deep breath. "Come in!" Victor Hammond entered, a tall, lean man with silver hair and round glasses. He wore his usual tweed jacket, looking every bit the stereotypical professor, but his piercing gaze sent a shiver down Lily's spine. "Lily," Hammond said, his voice smooth and condescending, "I was surprised by your email. Working with Karoline Leavitt, of all people." Lily forced a smile. "Victor, this is Karoline. We just finished a project I thought you'd be interested in." Hammond turned to Karoline, a flicker of surprise in his eyes quickly masked by a veneer of professional courtesy. "The White House press secretary. An honor." Karoline nodded, keeping her tone professional. "Nice to meet you, Professor. I just helped Lily with some practical details." Hammond sat down, hands clasped neatly in his lap. "So, what's this model you mentioned? 95% accuracy, you said?" Lily opened her laptop, turning the screen to show Hammond the carefully constructed fake chart and equations of Project Referendum. Project Referendum predicts voter behavior with incredibly tiny margins of error. I combined my theoretical model with Karoline's real-world White House experience. Hammond leaned closer, his eyes lighting up with undisguised greed. "Fascinating. That kind of accuracy could completely change how political campaigns operate." Karoline chimed in, her tone light but with an underlying sharpness. "Exactly. I used similar data to help win swing states in 2024, but this is even better." Hammond nodded eagerly, clearly hooked. "Do you have the full document, Lily? I'd love to take a closer look, maybe even show it to some people I know. Lily feigned hesitation, a worried frown creasing her brow. I'm not sure, Victor. It's brand new. I'm not ready to go public with it just yet. Hammond smiled, his voice now syrupy and persuasive. Lily, I just want to help. I know some political consulting firms that would pay big money to use this before the next election cycle. Lily glanced at Karoline, pretending to weigh the offer. What do you think, Leavitt? Karoline shrugged nonchalantly. If Professor Hammond's trustworthy, I'm fine with it. Lily nodded slowly, reaching into her desk drawer and pulling out the USB drive. Okay, here's a copy. But just for you to review. No sharing it yet, understood? Hammond eagerly took the USB, his hand trembling, almost imperceptibly with excitement. Of course. I'll look it over and get back to you. He stood, shook both their hands, and left the office with a barely concealed grin. The door clicked shut, and Karoline turned to Lily, a triumphant glint in her eyes. He took the bait. Now, we wait for Jen. Lily nodded, still feeling a knot of unease in her stomach. I just hope he doesn't spot the tracker. 30 tense minutes later, Karoline's phone buzzed. She answered, hearing Jen's quick, urgent voice on the other end. He just sent the file from the USB via email to an unknown address. I'm tracing it now. Karoline put the call on speaker for Lily to hear. Jen continued, her voice crisp and professional. The email went to a political consulting firm in D.C., Stratton Analytics. They work with all the big campaigns. The tracker shows the file was opened right after they received it. Lily clenched her fists, her face hardening with anger. Stratton Analytics. I've heard of them. They pay millions for an edge in elections. Karoline nodded grimly. I know them. In 2024, they tried buying data from our team, but we said no. Hammond's definitely trying to sell your research to them. Lily shot up from her chair, her voice filled with righteous fury. That's enough proof. What do we do now? Karoline thought fast, tapping her chin thoughtfully. Not enough to arrest him yet. Just the email and the tracker. But if Hammond meets them in person, we'll have much harder evidence. Jen cut in over the speakerphone. Hold on, I just found Hammond's Google Calendar through a security gap. He's meeting someone from Stratton tonight at 7 p.m. at a coffee shop near campus. Lily and Karoline locked eyes. That's our shot, Karoline said, a determined glint in her eyes. I'll tell you what, I've got plenty of experience sneaking around from dodging the press. Lily shook her head firmly. No, I'm coming too. It's my research. I want to see this for myself. Karoline grinned, a hint of admiration in her eyes. All right, Professor. But you follow my lead. We can't let him spot us. They quickly hashed out a plan. Karoline called Jen, asking her to set up a simple GPS tracking app on their phones to record everything. Lily grabbed her coat, her heart pounding with a mixture of nerves and excitement. If he meets with Stratton tonight, we'll get it all on tape, enough to expose him. Karoline nodded, checking the time on her phone. 3 hours to go. Let's move. We need to prep. They left the office, stepping into the now empty hallway. Lily glanced at Karoline, a mix of apprehension and anticipation swirling inside her. You sure you can pull this off, Leavitt? Karoline winked, her usual confidence radiating from her. I have handled a whole press corps at the White House. One greedy professor is nothing. You ready to go big, Professor Lily? Lily chuckled, a genuine smile finally breaking through her tension. With you, Leavitt, I guess I have to be. Lily Martinez and Karoline Leavitt stood beneath the fiery hues of the setting sun outside Bay Area University's quad. The air between them was thick with anticipation, a silent acknowledgement of the risky plan now in motion. Lily glanced at her watch, 6:30 p.m. Just 30 minutes until Professor Hammond's clandestine meeting with the Stratton Analytics representative at the nearby coffee shop. Karoline held her phone, double-checking the GPS tracking app Jen, her ever-reliable White House assistant, had sent over. We'll record everything, Karoline said, her voice a low, steady hum of determination. But we've got to be discreet. If Hammond sees us, he'll deny everything. Lily nodded, pulling the collar of her dark coat higher, trying to melt into the growing shadows. I'm not exactly used to this kind of cloak and dagger stuff, Leavitt. Karoline smiled, a playful wink flashing in her eyes. "Relax, Professor. I've dodged whole press mobs in D.C. This is a breeze. Come on." They hurried across the quad, their footsteps quickening as they made their way through the tree-lined streets towards Bean and Brew, a cozy coffee shop a few blocks from campus. Once inside, they chose a secluded table in the back corner, near a window that offered a clear view of the entrance. Karoline pulled her baseball cap further down, obscuring her face, while Lily slipped on a pair of large sunglasses, hoping to remain unrecognized. At precisely 7:00 p.m., Hammond appeared. He was still wearing his tweed jacket, clutching his familiar briefcase. He scanned the room with a furtive glance, then settled at a table near the door with a stranger. A man in his late 30s or early 40s, dressed in a sharp gray suit, looking more like a Wall Street executive than an academic. "That's the Stratton guy," Karoline whispered, her fingers deftly activating the recording app on her phone and slipping it discreetly under a napkin on the table. Lily held her breath, peering through a narrow gap in the window blinds. Hammond opened his briefcase, carefully extracting the USB drive Lily had given him earlier. "This is Project Referendum," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial, but laced with a smug confidence. "Lily Martinez model, refined by Karoline Leavitt, 95% accuracy, best on the market right now." The man in the gray suit nodded, taking the USB and examining it briefly. "If it's as good as you say, Stratton will pay $2 million for exclusive use before the midterms, but we need to test it. You sure it's worth it?" Hammond smirked, a flash of arrogance in his eyes. "I've gone over it myself. Martinez doesn't even know I snagged a draft from her server. She encrypts like an amateur, and Leavitt? She's just a lucky kid, but her real-world White House details make this look incredibly legitimate." Lily's fists clenched under the table, her face burning with a mixture of anger and indignation. Karoline placed a calming hand on her arm, silently urging her to remain quiet. The man nodded slowly. "Good. We'll test it rigorously over the next 2 weeks. If it checks out, the money will be in your account right away." Hammond shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "Take your time. Just don't leak the source. Martinez will sue me for everything she's got if she finds out." The suited man chuckled, pocketing the USB. "We know how to keep quiet, Professor. Thanks." They shook hands, and Hammond got up to leave. Lily turned to Karoline, her eyes blazing with fury. "He admitted it all. We've got him." Karoline nodded, checking the recording on her phone. "Crystal clear audio, but we need to go public. Just handing this to the police might let him wiggle out somehow." Lily thought fast, her mind racing. "There's a science symposium at school tomorrow. Hammond's scheduled to speak. We expose him there in front of everyone." Karoline laughed softly, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "I love it, but how do we avoid getting sued ourselves?" Lily nodded confidently. "We've got the recording, and the tracker in the USB is enough to prove he stole the research. I'll alert the university administration immediately afterward." Karoline stood up, a determined set to her jaw. "Then, let's get ready. Tomorrow's the big show." They left the coffee shop, a sense of relief washing over them, but still acutely aware of the potential fallout. The next morning, Bay Area University's main auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Professors, students, and invited guests filled the seats, gathered for the annual Science Symposium. On stage, Professor Victor Hammond stood at the podium, his voice smooth and authoritative, as he lectured on the profound importance of mathematics in modern society. In the back row, Lily and Karoline sat side by side, their hearts pounding with a mixture of nervousness and excitement as they waited for the opportune moment. Lily clutched the USB drive containing the damning coffee shop recording, while Karoline had already sent the file to Jen, ready to play it over the auditorium's speakers if necessary. As Hammond began to wrap up his presentation with a self-satisfied smile, Lily stood up, raising her hand. "I have a question, Professor Hammond." The crowd turned, a ripple of curiosity spreading through the auditorium. Hammond frowned slightly, but nodded with forced politeness. "Of course, Lily, what is it?" Lily stepped forward, her voice calm, but carrying a steely edge. Professor Hammond, what are your thoughts on stealing a colleague's groundbreaking research and attempting to sell it to a high-powered political consulting firm for personal gain? A collective gasp swept through the auditorium. Hammond's face paled visibly, his forced smile vanishing. "What are you talking about?" he stammered, a nervous tremor in his voice. "I don't understand. Lily turned to the symposium organizers, seated in the front row. "Excuse me, but could I borrow the projector for a moment?" With a nod of assent, she walked to the tech booth, quickly plugging in the USB drive. The coffee shop recording began to play, Hammond's voice echoing through the silent auditorium. "Martinez doesn't even know I snagged a draft from her server. Stratton will pay $2 million. The murmurs in the audience turned to gasps of shock and disbelief. Karoline stood up, stepping forward to stand beside Lily, her voice ringing with righteous indignation. "Fabricated, Professor Hammond? Then perhaps you can explain why the hidden tracking code embedded in the USB drive you took from us showed up in an email sent to Stratton Analytics late last night?" She held up her phone, displaying Jen's detailed report with precise timestamps and the incriminating email address. The crowd erupted. Students whistled in disbelief. Professors whispered amongst themselves, their faces a mixture of shock and outrage. Hammond stumbled backward, his eyes wide with panic, but he couldn't escape the furious glares of the university administration, who were already closing in. "Victor Hammond," the department chair announced, his voice icy with disappointment and anger, "you are suspended from your duties effective immediately. We will conduct a full investigation, and if these allegations are proven true, we will not hesitate to call the police." Hammond tried to stammer out a denial, but no one was listening. He was swiftly escorted out of the auditorium amidst a chorus of boos and jeers from the students. Lily turned to Karoline, a wave of relief washing over her. "We did it!" Karoline winked, a triumphant smile on her face. "Good teamwork always wins, Professor." Continue. After the dramatic symposium, Lily and Karoline found themselves back in Lily's office, the tension of the past few days finally beginning to dissipate. They reviewed the real data model they'd sidelined while orchestrating Hammond's downfall. "It's not entirely fake, you know," Lily said, pointing at the complex equations on the screen. "Strip out the deliberate flaws we added, and it could actually predict voters more accurately than anything out there right now." Karoline nodded, her eyes scanning the data. "I see it. And if we integrate my real-world campaign data, it could have incredible applications for public policy and even media strategy. What if we actually finish it?" Lily looked at Karoline for the first time without a trace of her initial skepticism. "You know what, Leavitt? You're the real deal. I was wrong to think you were just a product of privilege." Karoline grinned, a genuine, unguarded smile. "And I thought you were too rigid, all theory and no practical application. But you're not bad yourself, Professor." They both laughed, the last vestiges of their initial animosity finally melting away, replaced by a newfound respect and a budding sense of camaraderie. Lily nodded, a spark of excitement igniting within her. "All right, I'm in. But this time, it's a real collaboration. No more traps, okay?" Karoline shook Lily's hand firmly. "Deal. Now, let's get to work. I want this done before the press starts hounding me about the Hammond scandal." They turned back to the laptop, their heads together, refining the data model. This time, not to deceive, but to build something truly valuable. Lily glanced at Karoline, a quiet realization dawning on her. This young woman wasn't just smart. She was a force of nature. A few days later, the unlikely duo, Professor Victor Hammond's exposer and his intended target, stood side by side in a small, brightly lit White House press briefing room. The American flag hung proudly in the background, flanking a large screen displaying the impressive charts and graphs generated by their newly completed data model. Lily, looking professional in a deep blue suit, stood beside Karoline, who exuded youthful confidence in a crisp white blouse and a tailored business skirt. Facing them were a sea of reporters, their cameras flashing incessantly. Lily cleared her throat, her gaze steady as she looked directly into the lenses. Thank you all for coming today. Karoline Leavitt and I are excited to unveil a project we've developed together, an improved voter prediction model that is more accurate and insightful than any tool currently available. But its applications extend far beyond just politics. It has the potential to revolutionize public policy and media analysis as well. Karoline stepped forward, a confident smile gracing her lips. And we're calling it the Real Referendum Project, a testament to the genuine collaboration that brought it to life, unlike the fake one someone tried to exploit. A flurry of hands shot up. A reporter from CNN spoke first. Ms. Leavitt, in light of the recent incident involving Professor Hammond, how can we be sure this is truly your collaborative work? Karoline tilted her head, her tone sharp and direct. Hammond may have illicitly obtained a draft of Professor Martinez's initial model from her server, but he lacked the crucial real-world White House campaign experience that I brought to the table. We meticulously refined this model after his attempted deception was exposed, and the results, as Professor Martinez will elaborate on, speak for themselves. Lily nodded, gesturing to the screen behind them. We rigorously tested the Real Referendum Project using data from the 2024 campaign. The error rates are down to an unprecedented 3%, significantly better than any comparable model I've encountered. A collective murmur of impressed surprise rippled through the room as reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks. Another reporter called out, "Professor Martinez, you were quite critical of Ms. Leavitt in your class. What changed your perspective?" Lily smiled faintly, glancing at Karoline with a newfound respect. I was wrong. I initially assumed her success stemmed primarily from privilege, youth, and connections. But after witnessing her solve my complex problem with remarkable skill and then stand with me to confront Hammond's unethical behavior, I recognized her genuine talent. Success isn't solely about opportunity. It requires dedication, hard work, and a sharp intellect, all of which Ms. Leavitt possesses in abundance. Karoline nodded in agreement. And I, in turn, initially viewed Professor Martinez as perhaps too focused on theoretical concepts, disconnected from the practical realities of the real world. But she's brilliant, incredibly decisive, and demonstrated a remarkable willingness to adapt her thinking when presented with compelling evidence. We learned a great deal from each other. A light round of applause broke out in the room, the initial tension easing considerably. Lily continued, her voice gaining enthusiasm. This model will be open source. There will be no exclusive licensing. Our goal is to empower people with accurate data, not to have it locked away and sold to the highest bidder by some greedy consulting firm. A reporter from Fox News interjected. Ms. Leavitt, is this a White House initiative to try and regain public trust after the Hammond scandal? Karoline laughed, her Gen Z flair shining through. Nope, this is just me and Professor Martinez doing what we wanted to do. No one at the White House directed me to do this, but hey, if they like it, they're more than welcome to use it. Laughter rippled through the room, even Lily cracking a small smile at Karoline's refreshing candor. They concluded the briefing with a concise overview of the model's mechanics, Lily explaining the core mathematical equations, while Karoline provided insightful real-world examples drawn from her extensive media experience. As the camera lights dimmed, a palpable sense of relief washed over them as they stepped out of the press room.